The moment I pulled into the rickety driveway, a woman in a bright pink blazer stormed out, waving a piece of paper.
You can't live here anymore.
"I'm calling the cops," she shouted, her heels clicking like a warning drum. I froze for a second, my keys still in the ignition. "Wait, this is my property," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She smirked, flipping the paper toward me. "Fake HOA notice. You're trespassing." My stomach sank, but something in her smug look made me curious, too curious to just leave. I grabbed my phone, not to dial 911 yet, but to check the property deeds I had scanned months ago. My heart skipped when I realized something most people wouldn't notice. The cabin sat on the edge of the beach, yes, but the deed didn't just cover the building. It covered the whole stretch of sand for a mile. I smiled, but she didn't see it. Instead, she pointed at my old pickup and yelled, "Move that truck now or I'll have it towed." "Funny," I said slowly, stepping out, "because I think you're standing on my beach." Her face turned pale for a moment, but she quickly recovered, her voice sharpening.
"Fake HOA rules.
"You can't just—" Before she could finish, a neighbor who had been watching from the corner driveway shouted, "She's lying! That's all her bluffing." I didn't wait for more. I opened the cabin door, grabbed the small dusty box I had kept hidden and held it up. "You think this is just a cabin? This is my grandfather's proof. Legal documents, beach rights, everything. You called the cops on me, but I own everything you're standing on." Her mouth opened, then closed. She tried to signal someone, but the only people around were neighbors who were starting to film with their phones. Then she did the unthinkable. She stormed toward me, pointing at the sky. "I'm calling fake cops. They'll handle you." I laughed because inside that box was something she didn't know I had. And I wasn't just some cabin owner. I had served in the military. I knew tactics and I knew documentation. As she ran to make her call, I silently counted down, knowing the next few minutes were going to turn everything upside down. The sound of her shouting, the clatter of her heels on the sand, the cameras pointing at her, and the sight of the documents in my hands. It all set the stage. I knew she had no idea what was about to hit her. Her phone rang before she even reached the end of the driveway. I heard her stammer into it, "Yes. Yes, he's trespassing." Her voice cracked and a pause hung heavy in the air. I hid a smirk behind my hand. That pause? That was doubt creeping in, and I knew exactly how to push it further. I stepped closer, letting the wind tug at the papers in my hands. "You should know," I said calmly. "Calling someone doesn't make you right. It just makes you loud." Her eyes narrowed, scanning the small crowd of neighbors who had gathered silently, phones out, watching every move. She barked something about enforcement and rules, but no one seemed scared. That's when I noticed it. Her designer handbag was open, revealing a stack of forged notices identical to the one she tried to hand me. "Oh, so that's how you operate," I said, tilting my head. "Fake authority, fake papers, fake power." Her jaw tightened, and for a second she looked vulnerable, an emotion I hadn't expected. Before she could retaliate verbally, I pulled out my tablet and flicked through footage from the security cameras I had installed months ago, quietly. Every time she tried to sneak onto my property, every trespassing attempt, every confrontation, all recorded in HD. The crowd gasped as I projected the footage onto the cabin wall. Her face turned redder than her blazer. That's not—" She tried to interrupt, but the videos didn't lie. She stomped her foot, trying to grab the tablet, but I stepped back, grinning. "See? I don't need cops to prove ownership. I have evidence. Everything you're doing is illegal." Then came the next twist. My neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, walked up, holding an envelope with a bold seal. "Funny timing," he said, handing it to me. "I found this in the city archives. Your grandfather registered the entire beach as private property in 1965. Legally binding." I glanced at her as I opened the envelope. Her fake confidence crumbled, her attempts at authority dissolving into desperate whispers. She lunged, attempting one last intimidation, screaming something about HOA enforcement. But the reality hit hard. I stepped forward calmly, holding the envelope like a shield. "I didn't just buy a cabin. I bought the whole beach, and you just tried to bully me off it." The crowd cheered quietly, phones recording, and she froze, trapped between shame and fury. And just as I thought the battle was over, a black SUV pulled up behind her. The windows rolled down, and the uniformed officers weren't fake. The doors of the SUV swung open, and 2 uniformed officers stepped out, badges glinting in the sunlight. Karen's eyes widened, panic replacing the anger that had fueled her all morning. These, these are real cops, she stammered, her voice shaking. I stayed calm, hiding a small smirk. She had assumed authority by force, but now the real law was here, and I had already done my homework. One officer approached, glancing at her papers. "What's going on here?" he asked, professional but suspicious of her frantic tone. She handed over the forged HOA notice, stuttering, He's trespassing." I held up my grandfather's envelope and the tablet. "She's been filing fake complaints, impersonating HOA authority, and trespassing on my property," I said, voice steady but firm. The officers exchanged glances, eyes narrowing at the pink blazer in front of them. Karen's face drained of color. She began, but the lead officer cut her off. "Step aside," he said, motioning her away. I stayed a few steps back, letting her crumble under the weight of exposure. The neighbors were silent, their phones still recording every word. She tried to argue, but every time the footage and the legal papers spoke louder than her lies. Then came a twist I hadn't expected, but was ready for. One officer stepped closer to me and whispered, "Are you a former military?" I nodded. He smiled slightly. "Good. You know your rights, and I can see you're handling this professionally. That helps." I realized right then that my secret edge, my training, my ability to stay calm under pressure, was now working in perfect tandem with the law. Karen had no idea she was facing someone who could anticipate every bluff, every fake threat. The lead officer turned to Karen, holding back frustration. "Ma'am, impersonating a homeowners association official and filing false complaints is a crime. You're under investigation." Her eyes darted around wildly, the reality finally sinking in. The neighbors murmured, and some started clapping quietly. She tried to retreat, but the officers gently guided her toward the SUV. Her heels clicked against the sand one last time, a sound that would haunt her for a while. I looked down at the beach, sunlight glinting off the water, and felt a surge of satisfaction. I hadn't just defended a cabin. I had defended my family's land, our legacy, and the truth. And yet, even as Karen disappeared behind tinted windows, a nagging thought crept in. Someone else might have noticed her schemes, someone who wouldn't be so easily exposed. I pocketed the tablet, glanced at the envelope, and whispered, "This isn't over, not by a long shot." Just as I was about to lock the cabin door, my phone buzzed. A notification popped up. An unfamiliar number had sent a video. Curiosity piqued, I opened it. My heart skipped. The footage showed Karen meeting with another woman in a luxury SUV earlier that morning, whispering and handing over a thick folder. The caption read, "Plan B if the beach fails." I felt a chill. She wasn't done. She had backup. Someone else was pulling strings, someone who knew her moves, and probably had connections I didn't. I grabbed the tablet, cross-checking security footage from the rear cameras. Sure enough, a black SUV had lingered at the edge of the property before the cops even arrived. Karen had never been acting alone. A sudden knock at the cabin door made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the curtain. An elderly man leaning on a cane looked nervous. You must be the new owner," he said. His voice trembled slightly. "I used to work for the old HOA. There's something you need to see before they come back." I stepped outside, gesturing for him to come in. He handed me a dusty folder labeled Confidential HOA Files. Flipping through it, my jaw tightened. Hidden inside were memos, emails, and bank statements, showing that Karen, and her mysterious partner, had been embezzling HOA funds, falsifying notices, and intimidating multiple homeowners for years. The realization hit me. She hadn't just picked me randomly. I was the first homeowner to challenge her, and that had triggered a domino effect. I glanced toward the beach. The tide was rising, sunlight reflecting off the water. In the distance, a shadow of the black SUV lingered again, parked further down. Whoever was in it was watching. My pulse quickened. I had the law on my side, my military training, and the evidence. But I knew confrontation was coming again, bigger and more dangerous this time. Before I could react, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hesitating for only a second, I answered. A calm, chilling voice said, "You shouldn't have exposed her. Now everyone who knows is at risk, including you." Then the line went dead. I stood frozen for a moment, realizing this wasn't just about property or fake notices anymore. This was personal, and the stakes had just gone up dramatically. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the envelope, the folder, and the tablet, heading toward the cabin's secret storage under the floorboards. My military instincts kicked in, always have a fallback, always stay 2 steps ahead. As I lifted the hidden panel, I found what I had been saving for emergencies: a hard drive with encrypted files, backup footage, and copies of all property deeds going back generations. I smiled. They thought they could intimidate me, but I had layers they couldn't touch. The knock at the door came again, sharper this time. I peeked outside. 2 men in plain clothes lingered, casually observing as if they were just neighbors. But my gut told me differently. They weren't here to talk. I grabbed a small concealed recorder from my jacket pocket and slipped quietly through the back, leading them on a chase across the beach. My heart pounded, but I felt alive. Every step was calculated. I led them past the cabin, around the dunes, and toward the cliffs. My plan was simple: document them without confrontation, expose them publicly, and keep myself safe. As they approached, I hit record on my tablet, streaming live to a private cloud, the footage automatically sending copies to my lawyer and the city authorities. Their faces twisted in frustration, realizing too late that every move they made was being captured. Then came the twist I hadn't fully anticipated. They weren't just goons. One of them pulled out a badge, flashing it quickly. City Inspector. My stomach dropped. But the second man faltered, looking at the tablet footage, then back at his partner. Confusion flickered. I realized they weren't coordinated. They were playing a game of bluff. I calmly said, "Nice try, but impersonating city officials and intimidating property owners? That's another layer of crime." The first man froze, then tried to snatch the tablet. Quick reflexes, honed from years in the field, saved me. I stepped back, keeping distance, letting the sand slow their approach. "You've underestimated me," I said. Voice steady, eyes locked on them. "Every move you've made is on record. Every conversation. Every attempt at intimidation. You're exposed." As the tide rolled in, I felt a surge of confidence. The beach, my grandfather's legacy, and my family's future weren't just protected. They were untouchable. But deep down, I knew the final showdown was still ahead. Whoever was behind Karen's schemes wasn't finished, and they would come back with more force, more cunning. And I needed to be ready. That evening, just as the sun dipped behind the horizon, I saw headlights cutting through the dunes. My heart skipped. Another attempt, I knew it. But this time I was ready. I didn't run. Instead, I positioned myself on the balcony of the cabin, tablet in hand, recording everything. The SUV rolled slowly onto the beach. Out stepped Karen. But not alone. Behind her, a man in a crisp suit with an intimidating presence scanned the area. Karen's confident swagger had vanished. She looked smaller, almost vulnerable, but the man's eyes were sharp, calculating. I realized immediately, this was the real puppet master, the one financing all her schemes, the one who had been pulling the strings in the background. I swallowed hard, assessing my options. My military training kicked in. This wasn't just a property dispute anymore. It was a tactical situation. Karen stepped forward, waving a hand like she was still in charge. "You think you've won? You've exposed me. But he'll decide your fate now," she spat. The man in the suit glanced at her, then at me, his expression unreadable. I kept calm, hiding the adrenaline racing through me. "You're too late," I said, holding up the hard drive. "Everything you've done, every forged document, every intimidation, is backed up and already in the hands of authorities." The man's eyes flicked to the tablet, then back at Karen. There was a tense silence, the kind that stretches seconds into eternity. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a low, chilling laugh. "Clever, but clever isn't enough," he said. My pulse raced. I realized the real danger wasn't Karen anymore, it was him. But I had a secret he didn't know. Buried within the hard drive was proof not just of Karen's schemes, but of his illegal offshore transactions. Enough to ruin him completely if exposed. I held my ground, voice steady. "Expose me? I've already exposed you. You don't scare me. The evidence is live, online, with multiple backups. One wrong move and the authorities see everything." His calm demeanor faltered. The man in the suit had underestimated me. An ordinary cabin owner? No, a veteran with strategy, evidence, and leverage. Karen gasped, realizing her protector wasn't untouchable. The tension snapped as the neighbors, still recording discreetly from a distance, began to murmur. She turned, desperation flashing across her face. The puppet master took a step back, calculating, realizing he might have misjudged this entire scenario. And in that moment I understood. The real victory wasn't just about property. It was about turning their own power against them. I didn't hesitate. With the tablet streaming live and the hard drive secure, I calmly walked down to meet them. Karen tried to intervene, but the neighbors' cameras caught every word. I said, "It's simple. You threatened my family, falsified documents, and impersonated authority. The evidence is everywhere. The cops are already reviewing it." The man in the suit's confident mask cracked. He realized the leverage he thought he had was gone. I pressed a button on the tablet, and suddenly, emails, bank transfers, and memos linking him to every illegal move Karen had made flashed across the screen, synced to the cloud. "All your plans? Recorded, backed up, and sent to the authorities," I said. His face went pale. Karen's jaw dropped. The officers who had arrived earlier were called back, and this time they stayed, witnessing everything. Karen attempted one last tantrum, but the lead officer stepped forward. "You're both under investigation. Any further harassment will result in immediate arrest." She looked around, realizing the public humiliation was complete. The crowd of neighbors quietly clapped, some whispering congratulations. I turned toward the beach, letting the wind carry the tension away. The waves reflected the sunset, a perfect mirror of justice. My heart eased as I watched Karen and her accomplice being led away, their schemes crumbling. I realized that victory wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about protecting what was rightfully mine and exposing corruption publicly. Finally, I walked back to the cabin carrying the envelope, the hard drive, and my tablet. My family arrived, drawn by the commotion. My youngest ran up, hugging me tightly. "Dad, are we safe?" I smiled, ruffling her hair. "We're safer than ever. No one's going to mess with our home or our beach again." As the sun dipped completely below the horizon, I looked out over the sand, feeling a deep pride. I hadn't just bought an old fishing cabin. I had reclaimed a legacy, defended my family, and exposed corruption. All in a day's work. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that as long as we stood strong, no one could ever take that away. The next morning, the beach was quiet, the waves gently lapping at the sand like nothing had happened. I walked barefoot along the shoreline, the envelope and hard drive safely tucked in my bag. My family trailed behind, laughing and picking up seashells. For the first time in days, I felt the weight lift completely off my shoulders. The chaos, the lies, the threats. It was all over. Neighbors waved from their yards, some coming over to thank me for standing up not just for myself, but for the community. One elderly man smiled and said, "You didn't just defend a cabin, you defended the principle of fairness. That's rare these days." I nodded, realizing the truth in his words. This wasn't just about property. It was about standing for justice, for the right to live freely on the land my family had worked for generations to protect. I glanced back at the cabin. The pink blazer of Karen was gone. Her accomplice disappeared, and for once, silence felt good. My wife joined me, taking my hand. "You handled everything perfectly," she said. I smiled, thinking of the calm, the strategy, and the courage that had made all of this possible. "We did it together," I replied. Then in a small but powerful gesture, I placed the hard drive and the envelope in a safe at the cabin. The law was on our side, but having the proof physically secured felt symbolic, like guarding our family's legacy against any future threat. The camera footage, the documents, the emails, it wasn't just evidence. It was a testament to perseverance and truth. Looking out over the water, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. I didn't just buy a cabin. I protected a piece of land that was part of my family's history. I defended it against lies, threats, and corruption. And most importantly, I did it without losing my integrity. The sun rose higher, golden light spilling across the beach, and I whispered almost to myself, I didn't fight for this country to be told I couldn't stand on my own land. And no one will ever take that from us. As my family played in the sand, I knew the story of this day. Our day would stay with us forever. A cabin, a beach, a family, and justice. That was the real victory.